To be or not to be? That is the question. Actually, it's not the question. The question is, should I buy or should I rent? Let's find out, let's see what the numbers say, and let's check it out. Thanks for sticking around. We're going to be looking at the pros and cons of buying a house or renting a house. We're going to look at some historical numbers, i.e. what's happened to me, what I bought my house for, well, we'll go through some of those numbers as well, and what the future projections are for owning a house or renting a house, and see where you'll be financially based on my experience and the numbers that we're going to come up with. So back in 2021, I purchased this house, this one here, 3 bedrooms, well actually it's 4 bedrooms, but let's call it 3 bedrooms for argument's sake. It's an average house, Lower Hutt region within Wellington, New Zealand, 98 grand, not bad. On today's market, apparently, it's worth $610,000. Now at one stage it was supposedly worth $890,000. Yeah, I should have sold it then. That was the start of 2022, I believe, yep. So not that long ago, 14 months ago, if you could have sold it when the market was right at the peak. But because of the COVID thing and the inflation thing, all the house prices in New Zealand have dropped, and probably around the world as well, I'd imagine. Those are the numbers. We're going to move it forward and we'll see what we can come up with. In order to have the numbers that we've got, we're looking at purchasing this house at its current value, i.e. 610,000 New Zealand dollars, and we're going to be assuming that the buyer, i.e. me, has 20% deposit. 20% of $610,000 is $122,000. So we're going to pretend that that's sitting in the bank right now. And we've got 2 options here. One, we can rent whatever the market rate is for a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom house. We'll put that money into investments. We're going to imagine that we're going to earn an average rate of return of, let's say, 7%. We're presuming that's after tax. Good luck with that in today's market, but that's what we're going to assume. 122,000, that's our deposit. We've saved up hard. And then on the other extreme, we're going to put that whole $122,000 into a mortgage, buy the house basically with a 20% deposit. We're going to have no money left in the bank, and we're going to have all the associated costs with owning that house. So we do have some caveats in this. We're not taking into account any government assistance such as accommodation supplement. These are theoretical numbers based on my personal history. They may not be accurate moving forward. This is also based on an average 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom house. It doesn't include any KiwiSaver first home buyer investments or deposits. Does not include any agents, lawyers' fees, moving costs, any bonds, anything like that. And it also assumes that there's a 20% deposit required that we've saved up for purchasing the house, if that's the route we do, or investing $122,000 so we can compare. Let's look at some of the pros of renting a property. The first one, you can move quickly and easy. For example, you don't have to sell a house. You can just, basically you can move whenever you want. Within reason, you might have to give notice. There's no extra rates or maintenance costs, that's number 2. The third one is there's a minimal deposit required. For example, bond or a letting fee. You're not going to have to come up with hundreds of thousands of dollars. You might have to come up with a couple of $1,000s. There's opportunity cost, i.e. not spending your money on a deposit. It can be invested into the stock market or into some other investment, or it could just be sitting in the bank. You are likely to be paying a lot less at the start if you're renting than when you're owning a home. So some of the downsides to this, you're paying someone else's mortgage and or for their lifestyle. The landlord could decide to sell, or even worse, kick you out at any time. There are rules around that. You get no equity at all from renting a property. Generally speaking, you can't make any changes without consulting the landlord. Now let's look at the pros and cons of owning or buying a property. So the first pro of owning a property, you are not paying someone else's mortgage and or for their lifestyle. Any money that you put into the property to improve the value only for your benefit. Second one, you are the landlord and you make the rules within reason. You do get equity from owning a property. We'll go over the numbers soon. You can make any changes because you're the landlord. And probably my favourite pro of buying a property is the peace of mind where you know it's not going to get sold from under you, and you've got that property and all you got to do is pay it off. Easier said than done, but that's definitely a positive. There are some bad sides. You can't move quickly and easily. Your money is generally tied up until you sell, unless you get a bridging loan. You have to pay rates and maintenance costs, and as we'll see in the numbers at the start, it's quite hefty. All those numbers combined is going to be more than rent, but we'll go over those numbers. There is quite a large deposit required. In this case, we're looking at 20%, $122,000 for our $610,000 house. Somehow you're going to save that up. So chances are if you're going to be buying, you're going to be saving that money while you're renting, which is doubly difficult. You miss out on the opportunity cost. Because you've used all your money for the deposit on the house, you can't just do whatever you want with it. Say you wanted to go overseas, or you wanted to, I don't know, maybe buy a car or invest the money. Well, you can't do that if you've sunk all your money into a deposit for a house. And finally, you are likely to be paying more for considerable time. In this case, we'll work it out what the numbers are, but it is quite a long time in terms of at the start, at least. But over time, well, you'll just have to decide for yourself. The first thing we're looking at here is rent. And this is an average rent in my particular suburb. Back in 2000, it was approximately $160 a week. And by looking on Trade Me, we did some numbers, we did some more numbers. We did an average of the 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom house. Current price is actually $649, but this was my initial calculation. So we're looking at a gain year on year of rent increases of 6.2%. Now, our final figure is not actually going to reflect that, but we'll find out more a bit later. Now, again, in terms of house price, this house was purchased in 2001 for $98,000. If we look at today's current market valuation of approximately $610,000, now being the year 2023, we're looking at a gain per year of 8.67%, so slightly higher than the 7% that you could potentially get on an investment. However, this is not the final number we're going to be going with. Next, we'll move on to rates. So in 2004, we were paying $24 a week. I don't actually have the numbers, the figures for 2001, but we have them for 2004. We were paying $24 a week. Now we're paying $62.88. If you work out the difference over the years per annum, 5.2%. That's the number, the final number that we'll go with for property tax, aka rates. Unfortunately, owning a house comes with a lot of extra expenses, such as house insurance. And in 2004, we were paying $620 a year. In 2023, the last bill was just over $1,800. So based on those numbers, that's a 5.8% increase over that period per year. That's the number we'll go with, 5.8% increase per year. Next on the list, we've got house maintenance. Now this is for, well, doing bathrooms, doing carpeting, fixing the house, painting the house, buying a new tap. So originally back in 2004, probably spending $50 a week on average, $2,600 a year. But we're going to run with these numbers. Today, if we pretty much double that, we're now paying roughly about $100 a week in maintenance costs. Paint, carpet, you name it, new taps, new washers, new this, new that, new hose maybe for outside, maybe some window cleaning products, all that sort of stuff. It all adds up over time. So we're going to go with 3.7% for that number. There we go, we've got our baseline numbers for our $610,000 house that we've saved up $122,000. We've got a rough idea of what the market is doing in terms of how much more we'll be paying per year. And unfortunately, because of that horrible word inflation, we're going to take a quick look at inflation just to show you over time what happens to the value of money. The value of money decreases. Let's go and check it out. Here's a good example. Here's some New Zealand ice creams from back in the day. This is back in the 1980s when a popsicle was 20 cents. This one down in the bottom right hand corner there, 20 cents. I'll never forget the outrage at school when the price of popsicles, this is even before that time, went from 8 cents to 10 cents. Outrage, that's a 20% increase. And when you're only getting 20 cents a week or whatever it was, 50 cents or something, that's a big impact. Popsicles, 20 cents. Looking at the late 1980s and a popsicle, well, look at that, it's doubled in price. It's now 40 cents. Yes, the label's got a bit flasher, but pretty much it's still the same thing. So 40 cents for a popsicle, those were the days. And here we go, sometime before 2006, not exactly sure of the year. Well, they upgraded their packaging again, and now popsicles 65 cents. Latest price, I got no idea, but I think it's probably around the $1.50 mark or $1.30 or something like that. That's what inflation does over time. Everything goes up in price and you get less for your money. And one final example, this is an old Pizza Hut menu. When's the last time you could get a fruit juice for $1.50? Well, it's a long time ago. Or an entree. Yeah, an entree of some French fries for $1.60. What else we got there? Well, I got to say, the pizzas are actually pretty expensive, to be honest. But look, there's a glass of ale there over on the top right-hand corner, $1.60. $1.60 for a glass of beer? Well, that's unheard of in New Zealand these days. Anyway, let's move on. Now we're moving on to the current day, 2023, where we've got our $122,000 sitting in an investment, maybe in sharesies, maybe in something else, earning us 7% a year. This is our rent, as it would currently stand for a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom house in my current suburb, and we're going with the figure of 4.33% of rental increases per year. I've got that off another site which calculated the rent over a reasonable period of time, and that's the number that we're going to finally go with. I think it was from 2005 maybe up to the current day, 2023. Average rental increase of 4.33%. That's the number we're going to use for this. So as you can see there, if we're basing this particular thing off owning a house for 30 years, but in this instance, all you're doing is renting, then in theory, in 30 years' time, you're going to be paying $2,315 a week rent. That's a lot of money for 1 week's rent. Is that realistic? Well, looking at our inflation example, of course it is, because we all know that the value of money decreases over time. So that's what we're going with. And you'll see these numbers down the bottom there in green. That's a projection after the mortgage has been paid off. So moving on to the current day where we've got $612,000. Well, it's out by a couple of grand, but it's close enough anyway. You get the idea. If we push that out to 30 years, well, according to the numbers, based on 5.63% per year of an increase in the house price, I got numbers to back that up off a appropriate site. I'll put the link down in the description below if I can find it. I'll be able to find it. I'll put it down there regardless. You'll have some facts and figures to back these numbers up. 612,000, well, it's actually 610, but we're going with 612 for this. Over 30 years, the house is worth over $3 million. Now, that is barely unbelievable, but that's what the numbers say. And even giving it another 5 years after that, because of the rate of inflation and all the rest of it, and because you've got so much money in there, it's ballooned up to, well, $4 million. So quite an increase, you'd have to say. And again, looking at rates. Rates currently $62.88 a week. The Lower Hutt City Council has projected, I think it's 7.9% or 8% or almost 9%, one of those figures over the next 10 years. So that's a lot more than my projection here, but we're going with 5.2% because that's historically what it's been over the last 20 odd years. So in 30 years' time, our $62.88, $63 is going to be $287 a week in rates. Yoo-hoo! I can't wait to pay that. But hopefully by that time, well, 30 years' time, I'm probably going to be dead, so it's probably not going to matter too much. But if I had a job, let's say, if I was on 100,000 today, I'd probably be on $500,000 by the time I get to that age in another 30 years, but who knows? That's the value of money, right? $2 for a loaf of bread today is $15 in 30 years' time. And once again, we've done the same thing with insurance, $1,809 this financial year or the last year, whatever the last numbers I could get, and based on an increase of 5.8%, give it 30 years, we'll be paying just about $10,000 a year just for house insurance. Now, obviously, if you're renting, you don't have these particular costs, you don't have insurance, you don't have rates, you don't have maintenance. We'll cover that soon. And finally, here's the maintenance figures here. So $100 a week, roughly at the moment, with an annual increase of 3.7%. Give it 30 years, we're paying $300 a week in maintenance costs. Now, one thing you do have, if you are renting, there is a thing called opportunity cost. Now, because we're not putting our deposit into the house, we're renting in this scenario, that $122,000 can go straight into investments, starting to accumulate and investing and earning an income straight away. Let's go and have a look at a chart for that. Here we go, here's the opportunity cost per year. based on 7% after tax. This is what we're assuming in this scenario here, 122,000. Squirrel that money away, and at the end of it, you've got pretty much $1 million. That's just based on the 7%, but we've got some different figures to add to that, and I'll explain all when we actually look at the actual numbers. So there we go. So there's all the actual numbers that we've come up with. I've done this, I don't know, 2 or 3 times now, but these are the best numbers I can come up with for this particular scenario. I did have to recalculate a whole bunch of numbers as well, but we won't go there. Let's have a look at an actual real life scenario of renting versus buying, and this is for a single person with our $122,000, either investing it in renting or chucking it all on a deposit and buying a house. Let's check it out. And here we go. So blow it up if you need to. All good. Let's go explain some of these numbers here. So on the left hand side, we've got per week renting. We've broken these numbers down as best we can, starting in 2023 all the way to 2053, where basically your rent is increasing by 4.33%, because that's the final figure that we came up with. Go down to 2032, the one highlighted in green there. You'll see in, well, how many years is that? That's roughly 9 years. We'll be paying $950.58 on average for a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom house in my particular suburb. Remembering this is not the most expensive suburb. It's not the cheapest, but it's pretty, well, it's probably lower than the middle, I'd have to say. We've also got this investments column here. We've got 122,000, and we've got this extra investment column. Now I'll explain that shortly. If we go onto the right hand side here, we've also got the same scenario where we've done the calculation, mortgage calculator in the description below there. You can go and check out the numbers, do the calculations for yourself. Based on a 30-year mortgage of $488,000 on a $610,000 house, we'd be paying $633 a week in mortgage. Now on top of that, not only do you have to pay that to be a house owner, you've also got to pay rates. On the column here which says total cost per week, that is the cost of the mortgage, the rates, the insurance and the maintenance. So that's the total cost of owning a house. Now you can see that's a lot different. That's a lot higher than the rental costs. So at the start you're paying a lot more in owning a house just for the luxury of owning a house. So you're paying $830.68 versus $649.09. However, what we've done for the renter is we've put that extra money that they've got left over from the money that they're not paying on the mortgage, we're putting that back into the investment to see how it pans out. So in the first year, we're paying $43,195.51 in mortgage and other expenses. On the rent side, we're paying $33,752.68. We're adding another $9,442.83 to make up the difference. Either you're a homeowner or you're renting, and then we're adding that into the investment. So that's how it's tracking. Moving on to the green line in 2032, we can see here our rent at this particular point in time over the course of a year for a single person, 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom house, $49,430. And our total mortgage and other associated costs are $48,293.37. So at this point, after 9 years, being a single person, it's actually cheaper to own a house than it is to rent at this particular point in time. Now the one difference is you don't have the investments which you've been saving up. And at this stage, even though you might be paying less a year, you're not going to be adding any extra money to the investments because you don't have any extra money now. But you do have almost $300,000 worth of investments. So this is after 9 years, you're still renting, you don't own a house. You can also see on the far right hand side, your asset value of your house is now pretty much doubled. That's based on the numbers that we've looked at. Your asset is now worth $1.25 million. You still owe a whopping $419,000, so you haven't actually paid that much off the mortgage. What are we looking at there? About $70,000 that you've actually paid off, but your house price has increased. And now your equity is $833,000. If you look at the $833,000 that you would have owning a home versus the $295,000 you've got saved in the investment, I ask you the question, which one is better off? Obviously it's owning a house at this stage, right? If we carry on with these numbers and we get right down to when the mortgage is paid off, you'll see a steep decline. Obviously we've got a lot of money in our investments now. We've got over $1.3 million at this point in time, which is great. remembering that money is not worth as much as it is now. That's just the way it goes. Our rent has increased to $2,400. We'll be paying that every single week regardless because we're renting. We've still got $1.3 million, so we're still doing all right. But if you go on the corresponding column on the single column here with owning a house, our assets have now been paid off. We're not paying any more in rent. We're paying the amount that we've paid has dropped from $73,000 down to $42,000. That's because we're not forking out for the mortgage. We're still paying the rates. We're still paying the insurance. We're still paying the maintenance, which are increasing over time. But our assets are worth almost $8 million. Now that's hard to believe. Once again, $8 million in 30 years' time. That's chicken feed, really. When you think about it, $8 million in 30 years' time, if you're a 10 millionaire, if you got $10 million, that might be kind of today's millionaire, perhaps. That's the way I look at it. Based on those numbers, you're going to be paying less than you are in rent, and you're going to have a lot of extra money. Of course, you've got no money for investments. You haven't even been doing any investments. We're not talking about KiwiSaver, anything like that. This is just basically the bare bones of renting with an investment or owning a house, which is better. Looking at the numbers, after another 5 years, you've got almost $11 million worth of equity in your house. That's an expensive house. Versus $1.7 million in your investments. You could always sell your house at this point in time for $11 million or close to it, and then rent a house. Why not? And the final scenario that we'll look at is renting a house with someone else or buying a house as a couple. Our rent is now halved. We're now paying $324.54 a week each. That's for each person in the house. We're assuming it's a couple, of course. All the way up to 30 years out, we're paying $1,157.56 a week each in rent versus the house, which we've just combined the assets regardless. And by having that extra reduced rent amount, we can obviously boost the investment substantially. So we've now almost got we've got just over $4.5 million after 35 years. After 30 years, we've got $3.24 million. But again, with the owning of the house as a couple, your expenses are reduced. We haven't really even included those figures in here. You're up to over $7 million, and another 5 years later, again, $11 million. The moral of this story is if you can get a flatmate or a couple of flatmates, everyone rents at the start. There's no problem with that. I mean, I had to do it. I did it for many, many years. Essentially what we're saying here is the more people you can get into your house paying your rent, the more money you're going to have left over that you can invest, or the more money you can have left over to save for a deposit for a house. And if you do own a house, if you can even get a boarder or maybe get a couple of boarders, why not? If you can reduce your mortgage rates or the amount of money that you've got left over and maybe even pay the mortgage off faster, that would be even more ideal. But you can see here, even though you're buying a house for $610,000 over 30 years, the amount of increase is literally 10 times the amount. It's worth 10 times the amount, which sounds unbelievable. But I remember a house that we had in our suburb here 20 odd years ago. $70,000 was the going rate for a 3-bedroom house with 1 bathroom. And then they ballooned up. And now, well, last year at least anyway, $700,000, $800,000, not unheard of for a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom house. They have softened a bit with the COVID and all the inflation and all the interest rate hikes, but that was to be expected. Well, there we have it. What do you think? Do you think my numbers are completely up the wazoo and all wrong, or do you think maybe they're roughly about right and maybe we should go and look at that? So I definitely think, from my point of view, I think owning a house was definitely a good move. I wouldn't want to own another house. I don't have a second house. I'm not interested in getting into debt ever again. Owning a house looks like the winner for me. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you got some value out of it. Don't forget to hit the like button. It really helps the channel a lot. Like and subscribe. We'll catch you in the next video, and have a great evening. See you later.